So Andrea Fryrear, how are you?
I am doing great, doing great. Springtime in Boulder, Colorado, like it doesn't get any better for where I am.
It doesn't. I'm sure you still got a good melt going on out there if you wanted to
Yep.
get some snow. Awesome. Well, great. It's good to see that you're in the sunshine. And so let's talk about what's new. You just had some new research that dropped that I've been following along this research, the state of agile marketing. And here we are, 2021, and really excited to talk about that today. But for the audience, for the folks, how about if you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and AgileSherpas, your company.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm president and co-founder of AgileSherpas. We are an agile marketing, coaching, training, and consulting organization. I discovered Agile when I was running content marketing for a SaaS company many years ago now, and have kind of become a professional Agile nerd, I think, at this point in time. Me and my coaches go into marketing organizations and help them adapt what's worked in Agile software development to really apply to marketing work.
Yeah, SaaS loves Agile, doesn't it? Do you think those two things like absolutely go together?
Yeah, I mean, that's the origins of agility, right? Is getting software updates and new features into the customer's hands more quickly. And now I think over time, once we eliminated some of the bottlenecks in the creation of good features, right, the bottleneck started to shift to the ability to market those features effectively. And so now marketers need to be able to move at that same pace.
Absolutely, the pace of innovation. That's a great way to sort of lift or borrow from one functional area to the next, and now across what I see as whole enterprises going agile. And so what a year for it's like 2020, a year for agile. Here we are, 2021. We're going to get into your research now. I love data. I love research. And so what's your perspective on organizations, those that have had mature levels of agile? They were relatively seasoned with a year of absolute chaotic change for many of us. And did you see them really navigate and sail through the turns with agile? And conversely, did you see folks that weren't agile maybe get broken by the shift of moving to 100% digital? How did that play out for you in your observations over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, we heard from a lot of our clients saying like, thank goodness we had this already in place, right? We have boards, we have visibility, we have communication lines are already open. So the shift, nobody was like, woohoo, this is awesome, right? But the shift was less painful and disruptive for the folks that already had an agile system in place, and they could make that shift more easily than their counterparts. But then, we also had a lot of folks calling us up in, April and May saying, we've had this on our radar for a while and it is suddenly non-negotiable, right? It was this accelerant for a transformation that had been considered and maybe kind of deprioritized for one reason or another. And it's kind of the, never let a crisis go to waste kind of mentality of let's use this as a catalyst for change. And I think we saw that in the research, like 38% of our respondents said that the pandemic accelerated their adoption of Agile. And then I think it was 84% of the already Agile folks said that it was crucial to getting them through 2020.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, 2020, I mean, we learned so much that year, and I'll just underscore empathy. A lot of us threw ourselves back into, we are just humans. And whether that be marketing or business, we had to quickly pivot from, promotions and heavy marketing to really just communicate and connect with people, knowing that we're now communicating not just business to business or, business to consumer, but home to home in many cases. So there's been some fatigue there along the way. But have you seen that when you think about Agile, and we'll call it the happiness quotient of workers, have you seen that those internal cultures thrive that were more agile? And are, also, are you seeing organizations where that is a fatigue problem, just a work culture problem, they're turning to Agile as a solution?
Yeah. We've had several times where poor employee engagement numbers are a trigger for, an Agile adoption. There's so much of an emphasis on empowerment and sustainable pace within an Agile system that it can really help, especially as we're getting now into month 418, I think is what we're on of lockdown. Like, it feels like forever. And people do need to be able to start saying no to things and to managing their work lives more effectively. And we associate agility and speed so much, I think that it can get overlooked, that it is about sustainable pace and people being able to not work themselves into the ground because they have a system that allows them to focus on the valuable work and kind of ignore everything else. And this is one of my favorite parts of the report this year, is where we kind of compare and contrast the more traditional and ad hoc styles of work with the Agile marketing styles of work. And we see the Agile folks tend to be just generally more satisfied with the way work is getting done. They report less friction. They're more engaged with their work. Like, we see that as a very clear differentiator among the different work styles.
Yeah. And then, the research is awesome. And then also, what illuminated out of your research was the reliance or need for technology to facilitate a lot of this. What have you learned from some of these organizations you've been working with in this new work from home, in terms of, working from home, working globally, working virtually? Like, our day parts in which we work now are just so fractured. It's not, you go in and you're working and you're out. It's really, you're fitting it in within what you can do. And it's turning into, it's the outcome, it's the result that's being measured, not like the physical presence, and technology being a hub for that. What have you noticed there in terms of technology being an enabler?
You just can't do it, right? You cannot do those kinds of things without the technological foundation being in place. And whether it's different time zones, different demands on our lives in terms of childcare, family, what have you, work schedules are so different than they used to be. Having a single source of truth that everyone can confidently refer to. So whether I'm online super early and you're online super late and everybody's kind of in between, we can all look at this tool and this system and know that what we're seeing is accurate, that it's creating visibility and transparency about what's being done and who's responsible and so forth and so on. I mean, that's the adoption of the right tool is the top-sided enabler for the folks that have gone through an Agile transformation. And so being thoughtful about what do you need, what visibility do you need? How much can you concentrate into one place, right? So people don't have to log into 87 different platforms to figure out different components. I think is something that's really, really foundational to making Agile stick over the long run too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think about not just retaining talent, but attracting talent, and how much the technology plays into, top talent doesn't want to go to an organization that isn't modern and has the best technology in place.
Yeah.
They really want to have that opportunity, especially now. We need this digital fabric, or this digital collaboration to get the best out of us in our teams, whether they're leaders or individual contributors. Now that's great. So how about some of these? I love to use the term always ostrich syndrome. It's like an ostrich, right? They put their head in the sand while the scary stuff's happening. Some folks are able to either made the changes, were in the process of changes. But how about some of those those organizations that are stagnant, they're stuck in their ways, failed to move, still not moving in this adapt or die point in time for them? What have you seen? And I mean, think about the financial risk associated with not moving. Is the pain of staying the same greater than the pain of change with Agile?
I think most people have started to get over that sense. One of the things that we always ask in the survey, and we have asked for 4 years now, is what's the main barrier to greater agility? And last year it was like neck and neck between knowledge, like we just don't know enough about Agile, and our current processes work well enough, right? Like this is okay. And then this year it's like that. The number of folks who said our processes work well enough, like plummeted. So in a weird way, that made me happy because people are finally recognizing that good enough isn't good enough anymore. And that we do have to be able to be responsive, adaptive to the market, to our customers, to the craziness that we've all had to deal with over the last year. So I think that we're seeing that shift. The difference is going to be whether people can, especially in these large legacy organizations, can move more quickly than they're accustomed to make those changes. Because if you are spending 2 years figuring out what your pilot is going to be, your competitors have gone through their entire Agile transformation in that time, right? So like you've got to still up your metabolism to make it work.
I like that. Yeah, up your metabolism. That's a great way to think about it. Even if it's a mindset shift across the org, but it takes a leader to be able to do that and say, hey, we're not gonna do it the same old ways. But yeah, last year, I mean, we said there's a lot of silver linings, obviously, that came out of last year. You called it an accelerant of many cases, making the most out of an opportunity to change. Yeah, I mean, Aprimo, we've seen our customers do that, financial services organizations, life sciences, consumer brands. They took that opportunity to change as well. And some of them who are on platforms of technology, they literally just didn't show up to work. They pulled up to their desk and the continuity of business continued. And so any other silver lining moments that you've seen with some of your clients that it was either that opportunity to change and they took it, and or the Agile was in place and they didn't skip a beat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know we share some clients who used that moment to shift. I'm thinking about a financial services organization, particularly that, like the PPP, the loans, right, were coming out and they needed to communicate really rapidly with their client base about what was available and how to take advantage of it and so forth. And so they quickly spun up some Agile, they called them tiger teams, right, to employ Agile ways of working for the first time in that organization to tackle those problems. And it was this great use case for agility. And they were able to prove that, yes, even without some kind of major culture shift, or, we didn't have to wait for those things to happen. We could begin to employ Agile ways of working now to solve business problems. And then, of course, we're trying to also create the conditions for larger culture shifts and things over time, but it's not a first this, then that. They can be moving in parallel, which I think has been a nice unlocking of some objections, that some people have been like, well, we're so traditional, there's no way this will ever work here. But necessity created the conditions to prove out that, yes, it can work here. And now, that organization is 10 months along in an overall overarching transformation for all the teams now that started in that moment of need.
Yeah, that's great. And then now let's focus on, so Agile, I don't want to call it, is traditionally in more of like an execution phase of a company's go-to-market. But what about Agile now? And I saw some of this data in the research. It's found its way upstream into the strategic annual planning, go-to-market processes, things around budget and planning, and then optimization cycles built into an execution cycle where there's iterative planning, iterative budgeting, iterative investments, rapid reallocation of spend and investments, pulling out of markets, redistribution of funds, because now we're getting these insights in more real time. So it's almost Agile has moved up a tier in, I'll call it the echelons of an enterprise, and then also earlier on in go-to-market processes. Have you also, I mean, the data showed that, but
Yeah.
what have you seen there too?
Yeah, it's so exciting. That's the first year. This is the first year we've asked that particular question, and I'm really glad that we did, because I was surprised at how pervasive that has shown itself to be. How many organizations have made that change? So it's no longer, well, let's do our annual plan like we always have, and then try to get the teams to execute that plan in an agile way, which of course creates friction and challenges. But to then re-examine those plans quarterly, some people are even saying monthly, they're looking at things and determining based on the data what's working, what's not. I'm even seeing some of the more progressive organizations will dynamically reconfigure, let's say, their teams to say, this is an emerging opportunity. Let's put more people on this problem. Let's put more money in that direction. And it's really exciting to see that kind of fungibility showing up at the enterprise marketing level. So it's not just optimizing for team level execution of agile ways of working. It's now that more holistic across multiple teams. One of my favorites has been, I actually heard a marketing leader say, the priorities that I'm traditionally responsible for are not what the business needs. So take my budget, right? Like, let's put it towards a more high value activity. Take my people, right? And you would never hear that happening in a super traditional environment, but because everybody is now fixated on customer value, right? Like, how are we going to deliver value? How are we going to meet the business needs? Whatever that takes, let's reconfigure and let's get that done as a group, instead of like, well, I'm responsible for this metric, and so I'm going to do whatever it takes to move that needle, even if that's not the most important thing for us to work on as a unit.
Yeah. Now that gives new meaning to take my money. But I love that, because what it does now is it gives the organization permission to bring in intellectual honesty to their functional area and then share it with another part of the organization, and then ultimately being more accountable with the funds of the organization. So it brings a whole new level of operational thinking, systems thinking of the entirety, like getting wider in your strategic vision for whatever your functional area is. That can only make you a stronger player, across the functional area line. I love that. So, and I'm also glad you asked the question, because you'd never get the data unless you asked the question. But then back to the stats in the survey, did anything else surprise you or jump out at you that you weren't expecting, that you just said, wow, after 4 years of, running this survey, what really stood out?
Those were some of the big ones for me, were those new ones. Oh, the other one was that we asked folks which kind of functional areas in marketing were applying agile ways of working. And the usual suspects, right, are kind of digital, web, those sorts of people that tend to bump up against agile ways of working because they collaborate closely with the tech folks. But it was like creative services, operations, ABM, some of these things that you would not have expected to be at the top of the list. And I continue to point to that data with our clients and say, there's no excuse, right? Like, everybody can use this. It's pervasive across all types of work. Because sometimes people are looking for the out, right? Like, well, we're creative and special magical snowflakes that don't need to put our work on a Kanban board, but it works beautifully for all kinds of work. And now we've got data to point to say that you may be a special magical snowflake, but you still need to put your work on the Kanban board.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, this research is massively rich. Everybody needs to read this. I've been sharing it as much as possible throughout the years, but Andrea, this is Power Players, and you got to let out a secret. You've been educating, you've forged a career. You're an author. You're a thought leader in Agile. Agile, it's taken new meaning on throughout all the years. What is your power play?
I think my power play is getting the entire organization to go Agile by getting marketing to do it. So we are like the Agile Trojan horse right now, where we're going to sneak agility in for everybody by adopting it inside of marketing. So that's the secret's out of the bag now, but that's our power play. Is marketing is the forerunners for business agility for everybody.
I love that. Andrea, thank you so much. It was great to share this knowledge illumination with you, and everybody needs to check out your new report.
Thanks for having me.
All right, cheers.